My son's about to turn 10. He turns 10 in like 2 weeks, and he's in fourth grade. My daughter just turned 8, and she's in second grade.
Nice. So double digits, that's a big one, eh? Man,
Yeah, it's huge.
I got two little boys. So I got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and then we have another little boy on the way actually, due in May. It's I mean, I was actually thinking about 10, just my kids turning 10.
Hmm.
And there's always like, hey, the time goes by so quickly. And so, I mean, I got a 4-year-old, right? 6 years away sounds like a long time. I know that when that day happens, I'm just going to sit there and just think, man, where did that time go?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when my kid was 4 years old and thinking the exact same thing. I like even have journal entries about it. Like, man, when he's 10 years old, there's only 8 years left or whatever. And it can't help it, man. It just happens. Like it's a sad thing, but it's also for me watching the kids get older. Like if I'm doing a good job as a father, then and they're learning and they're growing and they're getting stronger, then I'm okay. Like, then I'm okay with them getting older. If I was doing a shitty job as a dad and they were not turning into people that I was proud of, or I thought they had big problems that I needed to address, that'd be a bigger issue. Like if he was 16 years old and I was an alcoholic for 16 years and I had 2 years left to lose 100 pounds, quit drinking, and stop being an asshole, then that'd be a big crisis.
Right.
But I'm pretty proud of where he's at, where my daughter's at. So that like when time passes, it's less, I don't know, sad whenever I'm like proud of the person that he is and she is. But man,
Right.
I remember like when you're 1 years old, 2 years old, just thinking like, oh my, like it was always like 10. I was like, man, my kid's 10. Like that's not gonna happen. That day's not gonna happen, and it
Yeah.
just happens, And
Yeah.
then here's my dog. Sorry, he's
No,
being
it's all
needy.
good. All good. I love it. What kind of things? Because this is one that I always think about, just projecting into the future. Like, what kind of things make you proud about your children? What are, and did you, so I guess it's twofold. What makes you proud about your kids? Not to get into, specific details. Um, but yeah, what kind of things make you proud about your kids? And then did you see that, let's say 6 years ago, did you kind of project that into the future and say, these are the sorts of things that I want to start instilling in my children? And now you're seeing the fruits of that?
Yeah, I've been very intentional about my role as a dad since the beginning, and like one of the things just specific is like their emotional resilience. And we just got back from a jujitsu tournament with my son, and I mean, I posted about this. I like to share these lessons with everyone. And he went from getting, I don't know, kind of like beat up pretty bad the first half of the tournament. Like he was 1-3. He won one, lost three, and he was like in tears because like these kids were just really rough on him. They were bigger than him, stronger than him. And then so he wanted to quit. He wanted to go home. And then we battled back and we ended up winning gold the second half of the tournament in Nogi. And through
Nice.
that, which is like an amazing emotional transformation that he went through. So he's very emotionally resilient, and a lot more so than than most adults I know. Like he can, when he's going through a bad time, he can work through it. He knows that it's okay that he feels those emotions. He understands that he can improve, he can rebound, and that if he pushes himself, it's good. And a lot of these lessons come through teaching in jujitsu if I'm aware and observe it as they're happening. But when he was little, like when he was 1 year old, like 1 years old and less, like I would take him and my daughter outside immediately and just like grab their arm and run them around with them. We went on hikes all the time. I'd have them do dangerous things like put them up on trees and have them like when he was 2, 3, 4 years old, out at the playground, I'd put him up on the highest ledge and have him jump off and teach him how to roll. So
Right.
like I've been, I don't know, intentional about that kind of thing from the beginning, and I think it's kind of showing itself in him a little bit right now.
That's really cool. It, yeah, it's one of those things that I always try to, well, obviously I have my goals of, what I kind of want them to be like emotionally strong. I want them to be just super kind, whether it's in actions, their thoughts, everything's. Um, So all these things that when they become, because I've got two boys and like I said, another one. So when they become young men, here's how I hope they treat people and how I hope they interact. But it's one of those things that I'm in the stage now of, okay, I'm doing all this stuff, but I won't know until they become young men. I won't really know. I'll have an idea and I'll have a projection of, okay, they're starting to act a certain way, or they're able to deal with challenges. But when they're 16 and when they're 18, you don't really know until you're hit with that time in life. So it's one of those ones that I'm just trying to learn and figure out, like, what are the best ways? What are the top ways? What are some things that I can do? So I love hearing perspective of people that have kids older than me. One of the great things they say you can do is find someone who's already done it and then ask them how they did it. So if I want to raise an emotionally strong 10-year-old, it's go out and find someone who has a 10-year-old who has resilience and then just figure out, okay, how they did it. That's why I just love that question of yeah, kind of what was your process in that?
So you froze for about 30 seconds there.
Oh shoot.
It's
Sorry.
what happens with Riverside all the time. What was your question to me?
Sorry, I was just commenting on the fact that I love hearing I love hearing the stories of what dads are doing with children they have that are older than mine, who
Hmm.
just know, okay, if I want to raise a 10-year-old or have a 10-year-old who is emotionally strong, the best way to kind of see that path is talk to someone whose 10-year-old is emotionally strong and see the things that they did and then kind of take those lessons and learn from them. So that's why I just love that question.
Yeah, and there's right ways, there's wrong ways, but there's also like no wrong. I mean, there's some definite wrong ways, like if you're an asshole, if you're
Yeah.
abusive. But
Yeah.
there's you can also, as a father, get too down on yourself and too self-critical about your approach to parenting, to where it becomes a negative thing, where you start to spiral and just question yourself every single night. And that's not good because you have to allow yourself to make mistakes, and you have to allow, if you want to show up your best as a father, you have to be in good spirits, you have to be confident, you have to be strong. And if you're always down on yourself, you can't do that. One of the things we talk about in my program, Men of Fire, is just being resilient ourselves, showing
Mhm.
that to our kids, and rebounding as people. So whenever you make a mistake, whenever you fail, it's not your failure that defines you, it's how you respond to that. It's, do you stay down or do you just come back and show up? What's your, we call it the bitch factor. Is it 1 week bitch factor that you're down and out? Is it 1 day? Is it 1 minute? And the more we grow, we want to limit that bitch factor that we have. And yeah, if you have older kids, like my kids are a little bit older, but I also have guys in my group whose kids are in their 20s. And some things you can learn what to do, some things you learn not to do. And you just have to believe in yourself, go your own path, and when you make a mistake, just make up for it the next day. Just keep doing the best you can.
Yeah, I like that. I like the, what'd you call it, the bitch factor, how long you worry about something for it. That's cool. About the program, because this is something that I love. I love the name, Man on Fire, and there's a reason why I love the name. But before I tell you that reason, how did you come up with that specific name, Man on Fire?
Um, well, the brand's called Rising Father.
Yeah.
So from a brand, from like a business perspective, the overall brand is called Rising Father, and that has everything to do with like my own journey and the journey I think guys need to make. Like, and um, Men of Fire, the program we have, is named that because, and it kind of works into the story of Rising Father, that as men, as we enter our late 20s, 30s, you get a kid, you get married, you get a job, sometimes a job that you settle for, you lose some of your fire, and you need to rise as a man to become your full potential. And that's what happened to me. Like, that's my story. Watch my content, I dig into my story a lot because I know guys can
Yeah.
relate to it. I got ripped back in the day with P90X, this old Beachbody workout when I was living by myself, and that was great. And then I got married, went on a honeymoon for the next decade, went like up and down with weight. Took a job that I thought I loved, ended up not liking it, and stayed there for far too long. And got
Mhm.
overweight, got depressed, got sloppy, undisciplined. I still was a good father, and a good husband, but I could have been doing better. And because I settled for these things, like I lost my fire. I was not living up to my potential. And so I remember being late 20s, early 30s, writing in my journals over and over again, like this, there's more for me out there. This is not what I'm going to be. Like 20 years, I could stick with this job for another 20 years and get a pension and be fat and miserable like all these other retired teachers. Or I can burn the ships, go all in on myself, and reach my absolute potential and be scared. Like walk into fear, be scared, walk into doubt, just go all in on myself, become my best physically, become my best financially, as a speaker, business wise, push myself to the limit. And to do that, whenever you do that, when you take that risk on yourself, that's when the fire comes back.
Mm-hmm.
If you play it safe and you're like, oh, I want to take a risk, I want to go on myself, and then you scare yourself out, that fire leaves you and you feel yourself feeling weak and unconfident. So Men of Fire is all about getting our fire back as men, pushing ourselves harder than we ever have before, and reaching our potential.
Yeah, I love that. So the reason, I mean, that's what I guessed with the name. The reason why I just love the name is it was about, I want to say 4 years ago. So I'm religious, I'm Catholic. And part of being a Catholic is confession. If you're not familiar with confession, so you go.
Yeah, I grew up in a big Catholic family. I have 8 brothers and sisters. Said the
Yeah.
rosary every night. Went to Catholic school.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So part of being a Catholic and is confession. So about 4 years ago, I went to confession. I try to go every couple months, but this event happened 4 years ago, and I'm in the confessional and confessing kind of my sins, and not to get into specifics here, but just the general stuff of like I slept in, or I was lazy, or this problem with anger, or gossiping about somebody behind their back. Just this list of kind of the usual things, I would say. And you're speaking it out loud, talking to God, and the priest on the other side, he asked me a couple questions, and then he said something that it was just so profound. And he said, it sounds like you're not interested in anything that you're doing. You need to be on fire with life. And that's what he said to me. He said, you need to be on fire with life. And I remember just leaving that confessional and just being like, oh my, like that's so true. All these little things, gossiping about somebody else. That's just because I'm concerned about what they're doing and not concerned about what I'm doing, or why can't I get out of bed in the morning? Why am I, skipping workouts or breaking promises, all those sorts of things. It all just comes back to you're not on fire with the stuff that you're doing. So you're either projecting that onto other people, or it's slipping into other areas of life where you just don't want to do anything. And it's all just from losing that fire. So when I saw the name of, not your business, but of the program, I just loved it. I was like, it just resonated so clearly, because that's a memory from 4 years ago that I will never forget. And it's just kind of been one of my slogans that I've got written in different places, is just be on fire with life. And I just recall that all the time. That's why I absolutely love, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I know exactly what this is about. I feel that's so true.
Have you ever read the book Iron John?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, you'd like it. It's a long one. It's an old book. Um, but that's what a lot of that story influences my messaging in terms of Men of Fire. And I kind of like I felt this way for years, but reading that book, I was like it was like crystallizing these kind of more vague thoughts. It's an old
Right.
folk tale about and it's a long story, so I'll give a really short summary. It's about a like an old kingdom out in a forest somewhere, and this knight goes up to the kingdom. He's like a forest man, and he says, "I'm looking for adventure." The king says, "You can do anything you want, but don't go into the forest." So the guy says, "Well, that's what I want. I'm looking for adventure." So he goes into the forest. He finds this swamp, and he's with a dog, and this like arm reaches out, grabs his dog, and pulls the dog to the bottom of the swamp. And then The knight goes back to the castle. He brings some people, and they dig out this swamp, and they find this hairy man at the bottom of the swamp. And he captures the hairy man, takes him back to the castle, locks him up in a cage. And this hairy man is supposed to symbolize like the wildness in every single man. And there's a golden ball. I forget what exactly how the golden. I need to revisit the story. There's a golden ball that comes from the man or from someone else. That no, I got it. There's a kid who's playing with a golden ball. The ball goes into the cage with the hairy man, and then the kid goes up to the cage and says, "Can I have my golden ball back?" And the wild hairy man says, "Only if you let me out of the cage." And the kid's too scared. He's like 8 years old. So then a decade goes by, and he's 18 years old. He goes back to the cage. And he says, "Can I have my golden ball back?" Same thing. "Only if you let me out of the cage." He's too scared. Then he's 28. Same thing. 30. As he gets older, each decade that passes, he gets more and more desperate to get his golden ball back. Until at the end of the story, I'm butchering the end, but he either lets him out of the cage or he doesn't, and the kid and the old man like just dies depressed. So what the golden ball represents is like this magic wildfire that every guy has, that they have within them as a child, but dies as we accept jobs we don't want to be in, as we accept responsibilities that we take on that we don't want, or and
Right.
we accept pleasure over purpose,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. And as we get older, the fire dies and dies and dies, and we get more and more desperate to have that childlike fire back, because the chances that we get it back every year fade and fade and fade. But the
Right.
only way we can get it back is if we let that hairy man out and we just become the wild man that we are on the inside. So it's a very long book. There's more detail, obviously, but it's worth
Yeah.
reading.
What did you say it was called? I Am John.
Iron John.
Awesome. I'm gonna grab that. I love any recommendation, things along those lines. That just sounds like a great one. I'm gonna grab that.
I'm sorry you
Um,
froze again.
yeah, sorry. No, I'm just saying that. Yeah, that's definitely one that I'm gonna grab. 100%. I Am John. That sounds cool. I love the idea of as you get older, it gets harder and harder and harder to kind of recapture that. And that's something that I saw in you. So you were a middle school music teacher, and so I was a teacher as well. I just I just stopped teaching in August of 2023, so 6 months removed from teaching.
Yeah,
But it was one of those ones that I realized as I got older, it was going to be harder to leave teaching. And I knew that
yeah,
I had to do it now because when I'm 35, when I'm 40, expenses are going to add up. The pension's going to be that much closer. All the job security is going to seem more important. And I knew that, I don't like this anymore. This isn't what I thought it was going to be.
yeah,
And so the time is now to move on. Was your process similar to that when you left teaching?
yeah. I mean, we could talk about this for days. How old are you?
I'm 30.
Oh, yeah, I'm 36. And I like where I'm in the U.S. The pay for teachers varies wildly. Like you could be in a different state and get paid shit, or you could be in another state and be paid pretty well. Like in the in the county I'm in, like teachers get paid really well. So I was in a really good school district where teachers get paid well. And I'm like 14, 15 years into teaching. So I'm probably, I don't know, 5 years away from like the top of our pay scale, which is like 19. After 19 years, you get the top of your pay scale. And then and then after 30, 35 years, you can get a pension and just get that salary for the rest of your life. And to the teachers, I was friends with a lot of teachers who were at the top of the pay scale, 5, 10 years away from their pension. It didn't matter what happened to them; they were never leaving that job. Like they could be, and they went through so much abuse. And you go through different principals, and you get some jaded people who just, for whatever reason that happens in education, like you'll get some principals who just attack and go after certain teachers. And I remember one of my friends, he was that guy. He had 8 more years left. He's making 100-some thousand. He's, counting on his pension. And like, he just had non-stop issues every single year. Had something come up. He was at new HR. Principals were going after him. Like, he was in hell, man. He looked like, you see someone who's the president, they like aged 10 years and forth. Every year he just had more gray hair. He looked miserable, toxic, but he was hanging on for that pension. And for me, I would have had to have stay on. I would have had to have taught for 20 more years to get to that pension. And the thinking is, if you're in the teaching world, your thinking is, well, the max amount of money I'm ever going to make in my life is the top step of this world that I'm in. Like, there's no way I can make any more money than that. And that's what everyone I talk to, like, that's their thinking. It's like, well, why would you only have 5 more years left? You could be on the top step of the teaching scale. Oh my God, Can you believe it? And then 6 months after I leave, I'm making 4 times what my top step would be. Like, and if you have a business, like, so my thinking was, I can slave away at this job that is toxic and everyone's miserable and hates. Like, when I left, every single person that talked to me was like, oh my God, how'd you do it? I wish I had the guts to do it. Like, every teacher was jealous that I left. But this is something I've been building at for years. And like, I was like, I can slave away at this job for another 20 years and be miserable and not reach my potential as a man. Or I can go all in on myself, take a risk, and grow a business for 20 years. If I do both trajectories for 20 years, which one will I be more successful, more fulfilled, more confident, more happy, more wealthy? In terms of just the wealth, like, if I grow a business for 20 years, do you think I'm going to make more than a top step at a teacher salary? Of course. Yeah. But if you're in that teacher world, you're stuck in that mindset of, this is oh my goodness, the top step, the pension. That's the most. Like, no, you could quit today, find another job tomorrow that makes far more than you're making right now. But that's the thing. It's whenever you have that comfort and security of good health benefits, a guaranteed paycheck, you just get lulled into this matrix of complacency and safety that just kills your soul. It's like that Iron John book. Like, you're so afraid. Me quitting was letting that hairy man out of the cage. It was letting the wild man loose so that I could go all in on myself and get that fire back. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the exact same experience in terms of talking to people. Everyone so I actually haven't talked to too many teachers since I left. But my final year, I was planning my exit. So I had started part-time with a company in February of last year, and I was planning my exit. Kind of mentioned it to a few people that, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be in here long term. And there were either 2 comments. There was, what about the security and the pension? And then the other comment was, if I could do something else, they would. And every single person was, oh, my dream job would be fill in the blank. It was never teaching. Mm-hmm. Teaching was never the person's dream job. And I realized that it was just an environment of, 2 things. One, it was an environment of limiting beliefs in terms of capabilities, what people are capable of, and what you can do. And the other environment was exactly like you're saying. When you're in that world, there's a ceiling that's as high as you can go. When you're teaching, there's a ceiling to how high you can go. And all you need to do is step out of that world. And then you might be a small fish in a big pond, but the ceiling is so high. And like you said, if you're doing something for 20 years, I always just look back and said, okay, what is 50-year-old me? Which one will be ahead? The one that goes out on his own, starts into the business world, starts his own business, or 50-year-old Pat looking back on teaching, which one will be ahead financially? Which one will be ahead emotionally from being on fire and chasing dreams and chasing goals? And there was just I mean, there was no similarity to those two paths, and it just became so obvious that, yeah, this is not for me. I need to leave this, and the sooner I can leave it, the better. And the sooner I can make that change happen, the better. And I mean, people talk now and say like, hey, like next year, maybe when you're teaching, and I just say like, no, you don't understand. I didn't take a break from teaching.
Yeah.
Like it's over. It's done. Yeah, I will never go back. But it's just crazy.
I've heard similar comments too. They're like, "Oh, well, maybe in the future, if you want to go back," I'm like, "No, never going back." Teaching could be there's good. The part of teaching that's nice is teaching, is being able to actually teach a child. But in today's, at least where I was in my educational environment, that's like 1% of the job. Most of
Yeah.
it is dealing with bullshit from a lot of people have nothing to do with your actual job. And like as a teacher, you get this feeling that you're helpless. Like you have no actual impact on the people you're trying to impact. You have no control. You can't discipline anyone. Like you can't really teach them because you have no control. So that's why teachers just get jaded. And they're there for 35 years. That's where you get lazy teachers who don't give a shit because they gave up. Like they went into the job thinking that they could teach. They're like, oh, if I actually get to teach in this job of being a teacher, I'll be really happy. And then you get some like 22-year-old principal who never taught a day in their life, and they're like going after you for some random reason, and you get some new superintendent every other year, and they're just like, you get new rules and regulations you have to deal with, and then,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in today's environment, you pull 100 teachers, 90 of them are going to be miserable. At least that's my experience of talking to people.
Yeah, and I think it's probably different. You can have certain schools that are, set up very mission driven. What is the mission of that school? And you can have people that absolutely love the mission of that school, and if everyone's on board with that same mission, the happiness is huge. The buy-in from parents and children is massive. The principals, the board, the vision, everyone. But just for your regular run-of-the-mill school
That's like 1 in 100.
Yeah, exactly. We're there to educate the masses. I mean, there's not much of a vision or direction, and like you said, it beats people down so that you have an environment of there are so many older, complacent, younger, complacent too, just jaded people in this environment that again just brings down the culture, the enjoyment. If you are on fire with teaching, it gets squashed pretty quickly by some of the comments that more experienced teachers will say, like, it doesn't matter, or yeah, they make sure that fire gets put out pretty quickly. I've found
Yeah,
if it
man.
is there.
I looked at these old teachers that were retiring or about to retire, and I just told myself I'm never going to get that. Like I got my 10-year pin in my school. I remember being so sad when I got it because I promised myself I'd be out of the job by then. And I
Right.
promised myself again, I said I'm never going to get my 15-year pin. And I didn't. I quit.
That's awesome.
So I was happy I kept that promise to myself. But I remember in my last year there, they gave me bus duty. And, at this point, this was like in the spring, with my Rising Father business, my coaching program that I made, I was already like making double, triple my monthly salary. Um, and that was happening. And I still had a couple months left of teaching. I knew I wasn't going to do this, but I was still scared to leave, because it's like, do I just drag myself along for the rest of my life for the safety and security, or do I take a risk? And so I was still having that maybe. I still wasn't 100% in that I was going to quit at that point. And this guy that was on bus duty with me, he's just a giant guy. He's like 6'6", huge man. He could, if he went in on himself, he could have been like an NBA player, but instead he got into like magic cards and video games and went into education. So this kid drew like a penis on the wall outside with a marker. So this like brand new assistant principal comes out, looks at this guy and says, stand in front of that. Like this huge hulking man. And he just like puts his head down, walks in front of this penis and stands there. Doesn't say anything. And then she goes to him like in a bitchy voice. She's like, I don't want any of the kids to stand there, so you better not move. And
Wow.
this is a fully grown man, right? Teacher. And I was just like at this point, I was in the best shape of my life. I was extremely confident running like a men's movement. And I was just like, so it just cemented it. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm never coming back here again. Like it's just
Wow.
so humiliating. Can you imagine? Like that is what this guy's life is reduced to. Like he went into teaching thinking he was going to like inspire kids. Like you see these inspirational movies about teachers inspiring people, and he's getting ordered around by some like 20-year-old lady to stand in front of a Sharpie penis. That's just, but that's just one example. That stuff
Yeah.
happens 20 times a day, 180 days of the school year, and that's a
Yeah.
lot. That's the kind of life teachers have right now.
Yeah. I mean that is just crazy. And it all comes back to like just finding your passion, finding your purpose, but then also just realizing when, hey, you know what? I started this thing and it is not working out. And you need to be brave enough to just say, this didn't work out. And I'm just going to leave and go with something else. And I'm going to take that risk and bet on myself, even though people are going to talk about security and pension, all these types of things. It just goes back to, and teaching's one example of this, but there are so many people who just live their lives. And I mean, it's in part of, there's a little bit of it in everyone. So I don't want to come across as, holier than thou or anything. But it's just there's specific examples, specific careers where it is just so evident that people are not fulfilling themselves and people are not, rising up to become that best version of themselves. I mean, that's a crazy story just about that guy and your principal.
Oh, my school was nuts, man. And I've got tons of stories like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Like my wife teaches at a school. She's also a teacher at an elementary school. And elementary schools are different than middle school and high schools.
Mhm.
But from what I hear from her, like it seems like she's in a very positive, good school. And it
Right.
just kind of it's like top down. It's like who's leading your school, who's making the decisions. Are you going after people or are you empowering people? And
Yeah.
most people who end up in like administrator roles at schools are not the you're a Jim Rohn type of person or Tony Robbins type of characters. You
Right.
know, yeah, it just depends. And I mean, if you're surrounded by people who are miserable and want to be gone and have given up on their dreams, then that kind of can leak into you. Like I
Hmm.
remember, like I never went to the faculty lounge to eat. You know, I was like I had a small group of friends as a teacher who, like, I was very specific with who I wanted to talk to because I could not allow their thoughts to come into me. Like I was investing thousands of dollars into coaching and men's programs to help me build my own business and to help me elevate my mind because I knew if I thought like them, I would become them. So I had to fill my head with thoughts of people I wanted to become like. So like during the day I had my headphones on, like I was like, I am physically here, but next year I will not be here, and this will be a memory. Like
Right.
1 year from now, I will say I used to be a teacher, and that was a phase of my life. And now I can say that it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. That is just that saying, I used to be a teacher. So again, August was when I stopped. So we were a week out from starting the school year. I hadn't been in front of students yet. I hadn't gone in for kind of like that professional development time before. And that's when I was able to go full time with the company that I started with before. But there was still, September, October, people would be like, hey, what are you up to? And even in the back of my head, I just couldn't say the words, I'm in business now. I used to be a teacher. Just that saying of used to, I couldn't say it. I think there was just some level of doubt, right? That person in the back of your head that says, hey, you might be going back or this might not work out. And it's only within the past couple weeks that I've started saying, yeah, I used to teach or I used to be a teacher. Now I'm doing this. And it's it's a conscious effort of mine to say that's in the past. That used to happen. the future is something else, but that's definitely in the past.
You got to close off that section of your life. And there's something about being a teacher that has so much guilt built into it. And it's because people always say, well, teaching is a calling, it's not a profession. And really, what that is, that's just your license to be abused and taken advantage of. It's like, oh, well, he's teaching not because of the money, because he wants to inspire people. Therefore, I can overwork him and underpay him and take advantage of him. Like
Right.
that's what your the principals are always like, oh, well, you're okay. You can volunteer for this. You're not in this for the money. Like, they know they're just taking advantage of these sheep, and that is, man, was that the experience. And I remember, like, every year I was in the teacher, I just kept on saying no to more and more. It's like, no, nope. I clock in when the day begins. I clock out when, just like every other job. Like, just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean you can take advantage of me. It doesn't mean, like, I used to do marching band for my first, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And I remember one time I added up all the hours that I worked and how much I got for my, like, stipends. It ended up being 10 cents an hour. Like, that's how much I was getting paid. It was 10 cents an hour for all the time I put in, like all the concerts, all the rehearsals, all the field trips, all this other bullshit I had to do. And, like, I had children. So it's like, where am I? Whose life am I a part of? It's like, I'm not part of my son's life. Like, my son was 1, 2 years old, and I was seeing these band kids more than my own children.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like stuff we didn't have to do. It's like extra things that you didn't have to do, but if you weren't there, it was a big problem. So I just quit all of it. I just quit everything but my regular job, did no extracurricular things. But teachers get so guilted into doing extra work for free, and it's put on them by parents, by principals, by the community, by media. They all tell teachers they have to do this, that they have to just be basically servants. Whereas if you go in the private sector, it's like, no, you just job hop and you leverage who you are as a person. Like, many of my in-laws and brothers that are in the private sector, they are not loyal to their employer to the point where they're allowed themselves to be taken advantage of. It's like, no, if you take advantage of me, I'm going to seek a better paying job.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not want me? If you don't want me, I will leave. And, like, who wants me more? Okay, then you're going to treat me better. Then you're going to pay me more. It's like, if this guy's offering a better deal, you'll do that. Teachers don't have that mindset. They have this loyalty and obedient mindset. And you can even tell, like, even my wife, she talks about when teachers talk about the principal, like, they still think they're students. Like, they're like, oh, when the principal comes in, it's like, you're an adult. You're a professional.
I know exactly. Yeah.
Why are you scared of the principal coming in? Like, they talk like they're like a student who's scared about they're going to get in trouble. Like, education is this weird world where teachers are, like, still kind of students. They feel it in their head. They're still children, but they're also teachers. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a weird bubble to be in. And if you're stuck in there, like, sometimes you can't see past the bubble. And as soon as you get out of it, you're like, oh my God, I was in there for way too long.
Yeah. Just that last point of, like, when the principal comes in. I remember I was talking to a coworker. He's 32, and this was this past year, 32 years old. And he said, yeah, I enter through the side door of the school. He takes the long way around.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like, why? He's like, well, so I don't have to walk by the office. And in my head, I'm like, okay, why? He's like, well, I just don't like our principal. She's kind of scary. Like, excuse me, you're 32 years old.
Isn't that sad?
You're over 6 feet. Like, what's going to happen to you that you are afraid of? But it's honestly, there's a comical side of it where you're like, let's zoom out and look at this. This is crazy. And then there's also just part of it where it's sad. But to fast forward, so you've gone through this journey, you've risen as a father, as a man. What is it like now? We just talked about what life used to be like for yourself. What is it like now, just being able to work with guys who are trying to improve? I mean, that's got to be unbelievably rewarding to kind of, work with people, help them through that mindset shift, see them become better versions of themselves. I mean, the messages, DMs, testimonials you get are probably just amazing. I saw a couple like, yeah, is it just, what does that feel like now to look back 6 years ago and then now?
It's unbelievable. It's hard to believe. Like this past year, like it hasn't even hit me yet. Like it'll hit me probably like 5 years ago. I'll like wake up one day and be like, oh my God, I'm not teaching anymore. Like, my life is different. Because it goes from, as a teacher for many, you go from, I don't know, not being appreciated and like you can work your ass off. And, a lot of times you're dealing with kids nowadays, like they just want more and more and more. And, you don't get a lot of thank yous. And it's just like you bend over backwards for someone. And instead of saying thank you, you get criticized or they want more. Like you go from that environment, the toxic environment, to a fully grown, successful business owner who invests thousands of dollars into you and then tells you, like, you saved my life. Thank you. I would pay you 10 times what I gave you.
Right.
Yeah, like you saved my marriage. And I'm a better father because of it. Now I'm in the best shape of my life. Now I have more energy. Like the difference between that is unbelievable. Like it's my ability to impact, and I can actually impact and help people. And that's what I went into teaching for the first time. So I could actually help people. But
Right.
as we talked about, like you eventually find out that your ability to do that is severely limited. And now I can do it on such a deep, like precise level. And man, I got like there's another teacher in my group who he's down 40 pounds. We helped him build a business to where he's on track to this is going to be his last year. And we've got like extremely successful, like multi-millionaire business guys in my group who are helping him out and just networking and just building each other up. And everyone's inspiring and motivating each other. And it's just all positivity. It's all positivity, all fire, all growth in every single area of our life, pushing each other to be the best. Like guys are waking up at 4 a.m., hitting the gym and, cleaning the house before their wife wakes up, journaling, doing cold plunges, and just becoming the absolute best version of themselves they can be. So to be in that world versus the old world is insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just so awesome. There's a community. It's just like there's that classic, you are the average of the 5 people that you hang out with, or look at who you hang out with to see who you are. It's just it's so important, such a known statement, but one that rarely is reflected on, of just who are you hanging out with, who are you spending your time with, who are you listening to, who are you taking guidance from. And it's just all the thoughts that come into your head from these outside people, they impact you so much. And what are those thoughts? Are they positive? Are they motivating? Are they trying to get you to the next level? Or are they discouraging? Are they tearing you down, constantly, dragging you back to who you used to be? And when you, again, like you step outside of an environment and go into a new one, it's crazy just to see the different environments that people have, some worse, some so much better, but you don't realize that they're different until you step outside and go into a new environment of just, crazy motivated, crazy in shape people, or so unmotivated, everyone's just passive through life. And it's until you kind of experience and look at different environments, you don't realize just how much difference there is and how much it can affect you.
Yeah, it's being stuck in a bubble and then breaking out of it.
Yeah,
You,
exactly.
you don't understand. It's like you don't know what you don't know. As a baby, you only understand the things you've seen before, and you don't. A lot of teachers don't understand how much money they could be making, how happy they could be, how different their lives could be because they've just been surrounded by that world.
Yeah, and even something as obvious as waking up at 4 a.m. I was listening to you. I was listening to some of your stuff and on one of the podcasts, and you say like you wake up at 3:45 a.m., 4 a.m. I mean, that is that's just unbelievably impressive. That's early, man. That's early and that's impressive. And to do it on your own, that's just got to be so incredibly challenging, and just take a level of discipline to just set that alarm and to get up at that time. Not so much even get up, but to go to bed at an appropriate time. I mean, that's probably 7, 8 o'clock at night, maybe 9 o'clock at night. But when you have a group of people who are doing that and saying, "Hey, we're gonna get up at this time," right? 4 a.m. hits, everyone's like texting the group saying, "Yeah, I'm up, I'm up." I mean, that's super motivating, and it's one of those areas where you can measure, okay, am I doing this alone? How hard is it? And then when I've got a group of 10 other people pushing me to do it, the results are just that much not easier, but it's so much more motivating, and just has that accountability to hold you to it.
Yeah, it's going alone versus going with the tribe is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And many guys find themselves in situations where they're stuck or making the same resolutions this year they did last year, same promises to themselves that they broke. And it's because they've been trying to do it alone or chickened out whenever they had the opportunity to join a group or whatever their reason is. And it's just different whenever you have lots of motivated, inspired men who are trying to push themselves to a limit, and you're being held accountable and you become part of that group. First, you're inspired by them, then you become them, then you inspire other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, you can go through a physical transformation, a mental, emotional transformation yourself, but you have to be a part of it. If you're only limited to your own thoughts, then you are the most you can be. But I'm going to be more than myself. Like there are people out there. There are people out there who I want to be like who are more in shape than me, who are wealthier than me, better businessmen, better husbands, better fathers. So I seek them out and I join groups where they're in, surround myself with them so I can learn from them. Otherwise, it's like I'm the most that I can be. I want to be more than myself.
Right. Do you mind saying who a couple of those people are? Because it always happens in stages, right? Someone is trying to break out, and then they look at you and they're like, "Well, Chris is the top." But then even you're now saying, like, you're looking at other people trying to level yourself up, which is just one of those amazing things of leveling up, is that there's just that striving and that goal to, hey, I can always improve. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm proud of myself, but there's still areas for growth, and that's just so important, is seeing those areas of growth. Who are some of the people that you're, whether listening to or groups you're a part of, that you're saying, yeah, these are guys that can help me take myself to the next level?
Um, yeah, for me, if I'm not growing, I'm miserable. So there's never going to be a point where I made it. Because any time I felt like I've made it, I've always backslid. So for me, if I'm not growing, if I'm not expanding, progressing, then I'm losing that fire. So I'll always be trying to improve myself. Um, yeah, like in the business world, Jeff Samus. He's not like a huge influencer, but he's extremely successful brand
Right.
builder, online business guy. I've been part of his groups, and he's been coaching me for years. Genius in the business world. In the men's space, like Kyle Carnahan, Superhuman Fathers, I was in his program.
Very cool.
His brother Ryan Carnahan, I've both been coached by them. I did their program. There's like your big celebrity types like Jocko Willink, David Goggins, those guys like that. I try to listen to them as much as I can.
Yeah.
So there's people who have aspects of who they are who I'm like, oh, I could take some of that from them, I can take some of that from them. And then you might see parts of them that you don't want to model, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you have to say, okay, who do I want to be? What's the vision I have for myself? And take what you can from people to become kind of like build the ultimate you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think realizing that, you have to take the good with the bad. What are the parts of people that you maybe don't want to model? And are those breaking factors on whether or not you should be listening to them? I just heard, so obviously the kind of like I'd say the hot button name right now is Andrew Tate. And
Mm-hmm.
he's got, obviously in terms of business and marketing, I mean, next level genius. Personally though, the way he, lives his life, his relationships with women, family, children. That's just something that, as an area of life, that I don't want that. I don't want those relationships. That's not the mission I have or the vision I have. And I got challenged a few months ago, basically saying, should that be a make it or break it factor of, do you listen to him in terms of, well, his marketing or his business strategy, but does that other stuff seep in? And it was a good way. It was an awesome conversation, an awesome discussion of pushing back and saying, if you're going to listen to people, you want to make sure that their core pillars are similar to yours. And then, yes, there's going to be outside things that you might not agree with, but what are those core pillars? Faith, family, business, ethics. What are those kind of core pillars, and are those aligned? Because if maybe you have one of those core pillars out, their influence starts to seep in a negative way. But I mean, I love all the guys. Superhuman Fathers, he's a fantastic guy. And I just saw he was with Andy Elliott, who's another business coach. So
Yeah.
That's an example of, like, Superhuman Fathers is, I mean, so many people go to him, and then he's, striving for himself with Andy Elliott. Then you look at Andy Elliott, who's, looking to Ed Milet, those kind of guys. So I just love that idea of growing. Kind of a cliche, but if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, or if you're not growing, you're dying. But like you said, that's when you kind of get fired up, is when you're always growing, striving. That's when you're on fire, exactly as your program says.
Absolutely.
So kind of my final question, because what was your wife's perspective on you making this change from, like you said, you were shredded, did P90X, then you put on some weight on your honeymoon, then you said for a number of years you fluctuated back and forth, then you get into awesome shape, start your business. What was her experience of that journey like with you? Obviously, there were probably some lows, some highs. But yeah, what was her experience like, just in terms of supporting you, or questions that she had for you?
She's always been extremely supportive. She's always like seen the best in me. I mean, she would never say I was not an awesome husband at all times, even if I wasn't. So she's a very positive person, very optimistic. She was the one who, like, convinced me to quit. And because when I brought it up, I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about this. And I think I probably will. But she was like, no, you absolutely should. She's like, dude, I know you're going to be successful with this. Just go all in and do it. Just quit.
Mm-hmm.
So she was the one who kind of like ripped the cord for me. I was like, okay, like, she believes in me. I think I can do this. Let's do it. Because up until that point, I was going to take a year-long sabbatical. Like, our contract offers this option where you can take a year-long sabbatical, and the school will give you half salary for that year. But if you take it, you have to come back for another year, or you have to pay that money back. So I was going to, take the sabbatical, but you have to have a medical reason, or if you don't have a medical reason, you have to take like 30 credits, which would have been like $15,000. And I would have been doing a bunch. Like, the purpose of my sabbatical was going to be for me to build my business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just going to save up that half salary money and just pay it back to them and quit anyway. So we were talking about it, and I even went to the doctors, and I got a note that said, I was like, hey, I want to take a sabbatical. I need a note that says, like, I'm stressed out. So he's like, okay. So my PCP just wrote me a note that said, like, Chris is too stressed and anxious to go back to school. And I still have that note. It's like, I'm going to, like, frame it. Like, I have it in my notes, my resignation letter. And then, so I had the note ready, so I could have done that. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, what is the point of this? And Sarah, my wife, was like, well, are you going after the sabbatical? Is there any chance that you're going to go back? And I was like, no, I would want to kill myself. I said, if I went back after sabbatical, I'd be so depressed. I said, I would just change as a person. She's like, well, then why would you do a sabbatical? It's like, just quit, because you're not going to go back anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you're right. So I was all ready to take a sabbatical, and then like last 2 days of school, we just resigned. But she's been extremely supportive, awesome, and optimistic. Very loving person, like the entire way.
Yeah.
Like so, I can't give her any criticism.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Just like almost, yeah, almost her just, vision for yourself, seeing the best in you, even when maybe your own doubts or you don't always see the best in yourself. It's just there's a there's a level to you that she knew about that she just wanted you to chase, and just even rationalizing like, think about this. Why would you go on sabbatical? That's just really cool, and that's one of those things of it's so important to know who you're surrounding yourself with, to have supportive people, and I mean, again, I'm blessed as well. This isn't yeah, just to have a supportive spouse is just so awesome. That's kind of like my wife and I were talking, and I was just saying like, there's no way I can do it. There's no way I could go back, and she was just like, no, a part of you just wouldn't be the same, and it would just be as
Yeah.
if there was that fire, and then it was just pulled right out.
Yep.
Just limit yourself, go through the motions, and
Whenever we don't go all in ourselves, when we don't take risks on ourselves, like whenever we take actions that prove that we don't believe in ourselves, that's when that fire leaves and we feel weak.
mm-hmm.
It's so important that we prove to ourselves that we believe in ourselves.
Yeah, and part of you, I mean, deep down, you always know those moments of it was fear or limiting beliefs that led to that decision, and there's just part of you that knows, and maybe it's not the conscious mind, but it's the subconscious mind, and it always just leaks in of there was, you didn't keep your word to yourself, or it was fear that drove that decision instead of intentionality. There's so much of that, and you know it, whether it's on your mind or deep down, you definitely know it, and then that just starts to seep into everything. Yeah. Well, I love this. I'm gonna wrap it up there because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But like Chris, I just love the story. I love there's so much of it where I was like, man, this just resonates with everything that I've thought about for the last few years, and just hearing your story and some of those experiences with school. I mean, it's just so crazy, and it's awesome that now you put yourself in an environment, bet on yourself, and then you're able to help dads kind of do the same thing and help men do the same thing. I mean, it's just so cool.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'm glad I didn't know you. So I'm glad I said yes and we did this podcast. I think you're gonna blow up.
Yeah, thanks, man.